It seems starting a stream, even months later, it is still just scrambling for everything at the last 5 minutes. And then still being late. But hi animation guy, hi Doofus Tooth. Thank you for coming out. Hope you've had a good past few, however long it's been. Despite what I've previously said, I have been back on 14, and the reason for that is a friend wanted me back so bad that they paid my sub for me, and I'm not exactly going to say no to that. So I've seen some more stuff. I will guide this conversation in a way that it is still understandable to people who do not play 14. If that is you, don't worry. But I've seen some stuff that probably isn't going to make it into the cut of the big video essay I'm writing in a minute. So I kind of want to just go off script for a minute here, dump a load of my thoughts, and have them chain into one another. And I do think that the easiest way to naturally flow that into itself is to tier list the fights. I should really have placed my model before doing this. That should be good. Can we see that just fine? Just calling sure thing. Awesome music too. I've got everything here: Extreme Savage, Unreal, and all the other miscellaneous shit. So we'll go in release order. So we're starting with Valagon Manda. And I feel like Valagon Manda really started the expansion off on a high note. Let me know about the music volume, by the way. I haven't really balanced it before. But I think Valagon Manda really started the expansion off on a high note. Like, the fire phase was really fun with the tank tower thing in the middle, where he goes to one side and then the tank and tower's in the middle and then the party's on the other side. I think that was peak tank fantasy, and even though it's ultimately not that involved, I think it's the best tank mechanic on a purely vibe-based level. Pure vibe. The ice thing feels like something it feels like we made it a lot easier than it was meant to be. And then lightning was just kind of there. It was also pretty easy, but like I think that's expected for a first extreme. I think that's actually healthy for a first extreme. I mean, I'll change it later if I change my mind, but like, what I'm thinking is like fire phase, S tier. And then lightning and ice are like mid. So I think for now, I average that out to B. But then I feel like that ignores a lot of stuff. But like, this fight is at least B. And no more than A. I need to figure out how to mute this phone. Oh yeah, I got a new phone, by the way. I don't know how to turn off. I don't know how to put it on silent. I think I got it. If you have any clue what I'm talking about here, I do. I welcome your reasoning on why I'm wrong, if that's what you're hinting at. Zeralja is a fight that I'm not too sure on, personally. Because, like, I really like the arena break sections where he's got the 4x4 and then he's got the swords on the... He's got the swords on the other 4 platforms, and, like, that corresponds to the main platform, and then the platforms kind of share the hits, and it's really... It's like... It feels like a puzzle that's satisfying to solve, but like at the same time, this is a fight in contrast to Valgamanda, which really plays up the role-based stuff. Like the tank tower for the tank, and then there's the nails in the middle that really is... There's like a DPS check, and then there's also a lot of healing going on, so like that really plays up the team synergy angle. Zeralja, on the other hand, kind of feels like a mechanic. It kind of feels like a fight where, for most of its mechanics, all 8 of you are doing your own solo fight. And I'm not too... even though I like everything in that fight, I'm not too sure how to feel about the solo thing. But, like... So I'm hesitant to put it S, even though I really, really like it. But, looking at what we have now, is it better than Valgamanda? Yes, it is. Yes, it's better than Valgamanda. Black Cat was the first Savage this expansion. And again, this is a fight that we kind of expect to be easy. And I think we kind of need to define criteria now that we're here. I should have probably done that first, actually. Okay, new text document.txt. Criteria. Criteria. Is the fight fun? Is the fight well designed? Is the fight memorable? Did it meet the difficulty expectation? Am I missing something pretty major here? I feel like I am. But we'll add to this as we keep going. Like, looking at this, I think both of these fights hit 2 out of 3. I mean, 3 out of 4. Like, Valgamanda, that was well designed, that was memorable, it met the difficulty expectation, but then it kind of let itself down in the later portion. Zeralja, fun, memorable, difficulty expectation, but again, the solo thing, this kind of thing. Defining the tiers S, absolute peak. Is the fight balanced and not AIDS? Good one. Is the fight balanced and not AIDS? Absolute peak for S tier. Oh, that's a really good. You'll be better. Get in the belly. See. Didn't care for it, but it's not bad. Poorly designed elements, but otherwise I shouldn't say poorly designed because that's only one criteria. I'll say bad elements salvageable. Too much bad to be salvageable. Okay, I think this is good for now. We'll come back to this after. F straight AIDS. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what I mean by that. That's just a nicer way of me saying it. But yeah, Black Cat, the first fight of the tier. I feel like I liked that this fight felt free flow in a lot of places. Like, of course, they add the box boss, they need to be fixed, where it's just 8 people spreading around the boss. The partner stacks and the light parties, they were also fixed. But a lot of the major mechanics beyond that, unusually for a Savage turn, a lot of this stuff you just straight up didn't need a strat for. Like, there was this one mechanic where she hits the floor a bunch of times, and then the floor tiles that she hits the most break. And there's no set way to dodge that. You can kind of just use your eyes and then be like, okay, so this is gonna get hit there, so then I'll dodge into that after it's hit, and then I'll dodge back. Like, there's a million different ways you could solve that. And doing it in a different way to the rest of your team actually doesn't screw them over, and that is very unusual for a 14 fight to have. And then there's the one right after where she, like, hits you up, or down. And then it breaks the tile again, so you have to go on the tiles that aren't damaged when you land. And then the ground people also have to do a mechanic, like a million different ways to do that, and then it doesn't affect your team if you're doing it a different way to them. Really appreciate having that from a Savage. Though, if I were to distract in one way, it would be, I think it's called Raiding Cats. The one mechanic near the end of the fight where the melees are taking a tether and then the tanks jump in and do ball. It's kind of first turn syndrome, as I've come to know it. Where a first turn of a tier will put the, like, an easy first turn will have the only annoying mechanic be right at the very end, so that most groups end up skipping it and not seeing it at all, and therefore the pug strat for that mechanic becomes to skip it or wipe. And like, while I see the merit of having that, there's also drawbacks too. Like, if they had a mechanic at the back where it's like, it's a hard mechanic and it's meant to be a soft and rage, we'll get to that concept later. But when they, like, if the mechanic at the back was a hard mechanic, hard enough that you'd want to skip it, but skipping it is hard, then it's kind of a choice. Like, do you want to learn a really hard mechanic? Or do you want to play out of your mind and do enough damage and not have to? Like, I think first turn syndrome could be good if it was an active choice made by the player, but in this fight it is not. And I do feel like that's what's keeping it out of S. But would I say this is as good as Zeralda? Probably. It's probably as good as Zeralda. Moving on to Honeybee Lovely, the second turn of the first tier. This fight was certainly a time. I have warmed to this fight over time, and, like, looking back on it, even though I completely took a dump all over it in the first time. But I look back more fondly now. But we'll say this straight up, this can never be S because of bullet hell. Now you probably don't know how bad this is just listening to it. But it is truly just one of those things that you have to go in, download the game, level 100 times, do like 200 hours of MSQ or whatever it is, just to queue into this fight and experience it, just to know how bad it is. Like, basically the way that mechanics work in this game is, if you, like, what you see on your screen is not always true. Like, if you see yourself going between two attacks, then the server can just say, like, if the server's having a bad day, it can just say, alright, this person dies because fuck you. So what you actually have to do is compensate for that by running directly into one of the bullets. I'm gonna pull up MS Paint actually. So for this fight, like the boss will be in the middle. That's the boss, and this circle here is the arena. No, actually, no, that sucks ass. That sucks so much ass. Okay, this circle is the arena. The boss is still that little squiggle in the middle. Like, she is going to be sending out these hearts and that act as bullets in a bullet hell. Like, let's say that's a heart. 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 And these are all moving to the end of the arena, right? So you'd have to go, like, between them. Like, that's going that way. That's going that way. Let's say you're a player here, and you need to dodge the heart that's coming straight for you. What should you do? Should you A, run between these two hearts, like this? Or should you B, run directly into the other heart? If you answered B, you are correct, because this game is very bad. Because A, that A path still gets you hit by the heart right there. This was so much worse in the normal, because there were like these floor AoEs going off at the same time and you couldn't always do stuff. It was just complete chaos. But they got rid of Savage, so it was just the hearts and some boss mechanics, which was fine. I still have to mark it down for being a bullet hell, but it is nowhere near as bad. But the fact that they made the hard mode fight version of the mechanic easier is like, that to me is admission that they know it sucks total ass, but they still left it in anyway. I'm brain dead, so I usually do random stuff and hope it turns well. It probably wouldn't. I don't know why I closed paint. There was this other mechanic in this fight that... This is the mechanic that other people really hate, but I do not understand the hate for. So she'll be like right there. And then your 8 people will be around. I don't know why I'm making these dots so small. but whatever. Your 8 people would be around. And what's gonna happen is that she's gonna have, like, her orbiters around the edge of the arena. And they are going to rush random people in your team. Like, the ads would go in a random order, they'd rush a random person, and it was just complete chaos. So the post strat for this ended up becoming do random shit, hope it turns out well. Which did not go well most of the time, completely unsurprisingly to anyone. But what really gets me about this, and what really makes me call skill issue on the people that hate this, is because there was actually a strat that you could do to make it somewhat more reliable. So you'd have your tank up here. So and then before the boss starts the mechanic, he would go up to the tank like that. Then you'd have your other tank and your melee guys up there on the boss. Then you'd have your ranged guys near the bottom. And this was like a really well thought out, well articulated, well reasoned, like statistically the best chance of people not having to move and still getting their uptime. And this was a really good strat, and the Pogues just didn't use it for some reason. And I will never understand. Like, without the plan, I genuinely cannot describe to you better just how chaotic it was and how futile it was without a strat. COVID alarm. 1. But this was the actual strat for the fight. I'm gonna play the video.
Hello, everybody.
I will actually allow it to have some video quality. I'll put it on 0.25 speed.
Alright, so this mechanic is not completely random. There is still RNG involved, and so any strategy will have lots of variance incorporated in it.
This guy will explain it way better than I ever could.
Why not? Well, there's basically 5 rules or fundamentals to the mechanic. Number 1, there are 16 total bees. Number 2, the bee spawns are all unique, i.e. no 2 bees can spawn in the same spot. Number 3, each player will bait a total of 2 bees. Number 4,
this is true.
Each player must have baited 1 bee before anybody can bait a second bee. And number 5, a bee spawns every second, starts casting after 2 seconds, telegraphs the line 5 seconds later, then finishes casting after 1 second. What this means is that once a bee has started baiting towards you, you can sit in line with the arrow for 5 seconds before you're forced to move. As it's going off, 6 other bees will have spawned, 5 of which are casting. That is to say, you have a very high chance of baiting multiple bees to the same location if you just sit still for a bit. Combine this with Rule 4, and if we split into role pairs, each pair has a 75% chance of having baited 2 bees by the time the first one even goes off. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're still going to take the tank buster after beat 1 north. This is to help the tanks position the boss. We're going to split into our role pairs into these positions. Tanks in the middle, ranged southwest, healers southeast, just above the stinger below the east-west line, and melee's max melee north. To handle this, the DPS and healers are going to stand as close to the wall as they can to try and bait as many lines into the wall as possible. Ranged DPS are going to do their best to stay within this square, healers will try to stay within this square, and melees and tanks will just try to stay within this square. The bees start spawning, and the baits start going out. We're going to try and bait 2 lines before moving. As I explained earlier, you have a 75% chance to get this. We move as the telegraph start, or just a bit before if you want to be safe. Then move back to our spot once it's safe to do so we can do the second set of baits. And that's really it. It's not just a spread and YOLO strat, it's more controlled than that. But there is quite a bit of leniency in it. Just do your best to get back to your pair position to bait lines, while also being safe dodging the lines. Not very complicated. You still have to use your eyes, and you still have to learn how to dodge. There is still inherent randomness. But the point of this strat is to give full uptime, or as close to it as possible, whilst reducing the possibility of potential bad baits by baiting as many into the wall, or as few through the middle, as much as we can. And that's that. I would really recommend giving it a try.
In one ear and out the other. That's completely fine. All you have to know is the PF made this fight way the fuck harder for himself for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And that's the point. But yeah, with that strat, and actually using that strat with my group, I ended up liking this fight way more. And then watching that with the rolls, that actually reminded me. We had it even easier, because we only had one melee. Actually, that's a lie, because for most of Prague, we had no melee whatsoever. And that was just completely... That's a very bad thing, because melee do the most damage. So, without a melee, the damage of the team was way worse off, but we weren't having any issues because of it. I think the comp was something like Machinist, Dancer, Pictomancer, Mage. So, like, 3 out of 4 of those are quite low damage jobs. And we didn't have any issue with the DPS check. Like, Black Cat, I forgot to talk about this in her section, but the DPS check in that fight was completely free. Completely free. So much so to the point that we were getting to Raining Cats with no melee whatsoever. And we were almost clearing with no melee, but then we got a melee, and then we started skipping Raining Cats, like, immediately. Same for Honeybee. Like, we were enraging with no melee at, like, 1, 2, 3%. Like, we could have super done it with no melee if we wanted to disrespect and completely humiliate the fight. But instead, we just got the melee for the immediate clear. That's kind of a trend for this whole tier, to be honest. The DPS checks were completely free. We'll say one more thing on her. The last mechanic being, like, one way you have to, like, meet in the middle with the buddy, and it would depend on the timer that you have in your debuff, and the same timer goes in at the same time and pops at the same time. That was really fun. And plus Honeybee Lovely was just a great character as well, so it definitely hits the memorable thing. And the music was really good in that fight. The music was great. So looking at it, was it fun? Yeah, it was really fun. Was it well designed? That's debatable, but I'm gonna lean a bit closer to no. Is it memorable? Yeah, it was. Did it meet the difficulty expectation? Relative to Black Cat, I felt that it was a good step up to a second turn. Like, if the first turn was that, then yeah, I can see why you'd put the second turn there. Like, I see the vision. I think it met the expectation. And the fight is in fact balanced and not AIDS. I still cannot go into S because of the bullet hell thing, but top of A for sure. Root Bomber. Now I'm kind of torn on this guy too, because it was fun to prog on melee. It was fun to fight for my uptime against this guy, because he had absolutely no respect for that. Just like he had no respect for the ref. I'm gonna see if I can find that. I'm gonna see if I can find a clip of that, actually. Brute Bomber punching ref. This is basically me saying this fight's really memorable. Yes, he dopes up and drinks a monster in the middle of a fight. And the ref is yelling at him. And then he's just like, fuck off, Clanker. Kicks him straight out of the arena.
My word, he just assaulted the referee! The scoundrel! No more distractions!
So yeah, very memorable fight. Probably strong contender for my favorite character out of these bosses. But, and it's a pretty big but, this fight got very stale on reclears. And I think I cleared this guy like week 6. So I still had like months of reclears to go after that. Every week for the extra gear, because they did the thing that MMOs always do, where the best gear is locked behind the raids and you can only loot it once a week, and you have to distribute it between the team. And that was my job as well, because I was the leader of the group. So I had to make sure nobody cleared ahead. I had to get everyone together every week. I had to decide who gets what. So there wasn't really a don't re-clear it angle there. I think I ended the tier with a pretty negative view, just because of the re-clear experience. Speaking of that, I don't think I put Black Cat Knight. I'm gonna drop it down to the top of B. Like a B+. That's like a B+. But yeah, they kind of fixed it. Dawntrail, the start of the expansion, kind of marked a change in direction, because back in Endwalker, if you were playing melee, then you were like the god class. And you know why? Here's why. That outer circle, that is the arena. This inner circle is the hitbox of the average Endwalker boss. Melee DPS and tanks can reach the boss from even the very end of the arena in Endwalker. So in Dawntrail, when they were like, okay, the bosses are now gonna be this. That was like a noticeable. That's like making Melee noticeably harder as a role. And this fight had a lot of like forced downtime mechanics and disengages and stuff like that. But contrary to what a lot of people were thinking that like maybe started Melee and Endwalker and were used to the hitboxes, I liked fighting against this guy for uptime. And I think that it was kind of in character for him to completely disrespect the need of the rigid rotation and the full uptime. I like that it was him that threw that out the window and not someone else. But then again, even though he's a really memorable character, I struggle to think of his mechanics. Like there's this one where there's like users going up and you have to everyone takes one each and they have to space them out. There's another one where he spawns some bombs and they all blow up and you have to dodge the AoEs. And then do spreads at the same time and stacks. And there's another one where he's doing cones and like donuts. And also some bombs going off during that. But the thing with that is I can't name any of those mechanics. I can't name a single one. Like, they probably all had fuse in the name, and that's not gonna help, but like, I don't know those mechanics. Like, Valagarmanda, Mounted Fire, Philly Disaster. I can name a few of his mechanics. Zeralja, honestly, I don't know. I don't know a lot of his mechanics. Names. But I know that there's the platform splits, there's the swords, and like a lot of that fight is the same mechanics being presented in a different way, so I can kind of excuse not knowing the name. But Black Cat, it's like leaping quadruple crossing. Why do I remember that name? That's like the generic raid-wide stackbuster or whatever. There was Raiding Cats, there was Mouser. Yeah, why do I remember the names of like the... But yeah, Leaping Quadruple Crossing, why do I remember the name of the generic Clock Spotlight Party stacking mechanic? A Bloody Scratch. Bloody Scratch. Why do I remember the name of the generic raid-wide of that fight? Because the boss is memorable. Honeybee Lovely, Rotten Heart, Alarm Pheromones. Those are the major mechanics in that fight. I remember the names of those mechanics because the boss is memorable. What do I remember about Blue Bomber? Well, I remember that he has a bomb on his chest. It's kind of hard to forget that. And I remember that he hates plankers, but nothing else. But like, I feel like I rate this guy like half and half across the board. Like, was the fight fun? Well, it was fun to prog, but it wasn't fun in reclears. Is it well designed? Yeah, I'll give it that. Is it memorable? Well, the character of Hector is memorable. That's the guy's name, by the way. You get to meet him later in the quest. that the character of Hector is memorable, but the fight against him isn't really. I'd say it met the difficulty expectation, and I'd say it's balanced and not aids. I'm gonna give it a lot more credit for the melee thing though, because like that at the time it released would have been something that it would have called upon a type of difficulty that is intuitive, but hasn't really been called upon in years, but people have been asking it to be. So I think I'm gonna. I was thinking about between these two, but I'm gonna like edge it out to A- at that. Wicked Thunder, M4. Allow me to start this one off with a unrelated rant. Fourth turn savages need door bosses. Right up. The way that a lot of them have worked in the past is like there's one boss, or like a maybe easier boss, as the phase 1. And then when you kill that door boss, then a cutscene will play, and then you'll get introduced to the. You'll get introduced to the harder, bigger boss. Like we have with Lindworm here. Like, they share the same instance timer, so like you've got like 2 hours, 120 minutes to fight the Lindworm. And then when you kill the Lindworm, the cutscene's gonna play. And then whatever time you have left out of that timer, you then have that, once the cutscene's over, you then have that much time to fight against Lindworm 2. So like, if you take 30 minutes on Lindworm, you've got 90 minutes to fight against Lindworm 2. And what that does is it lets both phases be strong fights in their own right. Because a lot of the past fights have worked like these guys. And they've thrived on it, but when the fight doesn't have an all boss, it either has to pull punches in both phases to not be too hard, or it doesn't do that and encroaches on ultimate difficulty. Foreshadowing is a literary device in which the writer hints to events that might happen later on, or whatever the saying is. Wicked Thunder really suffers from the former. They pulled punches, particularly in phase 2. Like, if we were ranking both phases separately, phase 1 would be, I'd see it a lot more favorable. Because it had a lot more engaging mechanics. Like, Electro Edge was really good. The gun thing, where she's shooting you, and then you have to go into spreads or stacks based on what debuff you got. That was fun. And then you maybe need to cross over. That was a fun mechanic. Electro Edge was a fun mechanic. Intermission was kind of a fun mechanic. It's like there would be some cones coming out, and then basically she'd do one set of cones, and then the second set of cones would be in the spots to where the part that she hit the first time would be safe the second time, and vice versa. And then she'd spam those over and over and over again, while a proximity bait is also happening in pairs. And that was really fun. but the thing with Phase 2 is that it's kind of nothing until the last two mechanics. Like, Wicked Thunder Phase 2 has first turn syndrome, if that makes sense. Like, she goes into Phase 2, there'll be a healing check that might, like, maybe you use a time limit break that, but nah, my group didn't do that because it was totally free, and the regen healer was goated. Thanks, Yama. But then there was like two major mechanics after that. The first one was totally unmemorable and kind of free. The second one I do remember, and it was also kind of free. And then Sunrise happened, which was an actually hard mechanic. And then after Sunrise, Thought Quiver happened, which was basically what I wanted from Black Cat, where it is an actually hard mechanic and it becomes a choice whether to learn it or skip it. But then we get into the bad, which is because this two-phase fight does not have a door boss, the boss HP is shared between both phases. So, like, if you're playing out of your mind in Phase 1, you get to skip the two actually good mechanics in Phase 2. Sword Quiver, you can skip that. But if you're playing really well and using the melee limit break instead of the tank limit break to do more damage, you can also skip Sunrise, the second to last mechanic. And then that leaves only the few free mechanics in the phase. So if you do that, which I did, because like I was already on melee by this point, and we still had Picto. Picto's completely broken. So I ended up skipping Sunrise. So I walked away from this fight with the impression that Phase 2 was completely free. Because pretty much every mechanic that matters got skipped. And this is a particularly sad situation because I feel like if they made it to where Phase 2 starts early, if you do too much damage to Phase 1, like what happens in most Ultimates, like especially Ultima, where Ultima can like cut off part of Annihilation early to go into suppression at a certain health percentage. If that was in this fight, I'd like it. Or if the two phases were a door boss, I'd like it. But both phases are let down by the existence of, or I guess the lack of existence of the checkpoint. Both phases get let down by that. I guess going to potential would be a D. I feel really bad putting this fight in D though, just because of the potential. But then again, this is potential fight, and I kind of have to rank it as that. It pains me to do this. You're such a good character, but your fight is ass. Your fight is complete ass. Now, Byakko. I'm just gonna start with this one straight up. This, even though that this is listed as a high-end fight because it's Unreal, there is no discernible difference between Byakko and a normal raid. Except for like one mechanic, and that's the mechanic that I made a guide on. Everything else is pretty much a normal. And you know what the one mechanic that I made a guide on is? It's the very first mechanic. So, we have a fight that has exactly one hard mechanic. And of course it repeats a few times, but otherwise it's basically a normal. And, like, oh, well, I guess I lie. It has an enrage, so, like, it's normal with a DPS check. But even then, that DPS check is really, really not that strict. So I'd say it didn't meet the difficulty expectation, but, like, it didn't meet the expectation in such a way that maybe it would have been good for new raiders that are completely new to raiding. Like, of course, it's not good for getting actual, realistic expectations for raiding. Like, if you're doing this fight as, like, your first experience with raiding, it's like, I've only done normals from now on, but I'm going to try raiding by doing this fight, and then you go into this fight and you clear it, and then you're like, hey, that's not so bad. Unreals are basically normal now. And, like, maybe that means people get hubris. Maybe it means that a lot of people that should have got filtered don't. But I see the merit in it too. Like, maybe someone who is capable of raiding, but, like, has that mental barrier up of, like, I can't raid, I don't have it in me. You take them into that fight, and then they're like, oh my god, I had it the whole time. I could go into more content like this. Like, this fight is a normal. Do not get it twisted. This fight is a normal. But it was still good for breaking down people's mental barriers for harder content. And it kind of tricks people into thinking that they've done harder content, therefore they can do more harder content. And I kind of see merit in that, but I also see drawbacks in that. I think this could have been straight up damaging, released in another tier, but in light heavyweight, because this released in, like, 7.1, like, midway through the light heavyweight tier with the Honeybee to Wicked Thunder as the parallel savage. I think that having an easy fight trick people into believing that they have it, basically. I think that I wouldn't want every Unreal to be like this, but it's good that it happened at some point, and I think light heavyweight was probably the best time for something like that. For when in the expansion it dropped, and for what Savage tier it dropped with. It was kind of the perfect storm. I hesitate to give it a high tier straight up, but it is responsible for good things. Byakuya is responsible for good things. There's weight classes to this. That's basically just the naming convention for this expansion. It's like, yeah. Basically everything we've gone over so far was Byakuya, Queen Eternal, Brew, Cloud of Darkness. They're all light heavyweight. But then when we get into Suzaku and Zilenia, that is the different tier. It's kind of like how WoW does it, if you ever played that. like when it moves up to a different weight class, then that is how like the old stuff kind of becomes obsolete, and then there's a new entry point and a new pinnacle, and like there's a new kind of progression. Like when it moves up to a new when it goes into the next tier and when it moves up a weight class, then like all the past stuff, like there's way less of a reason to do it in favor of new stuff, basically. But yeah, I think I see this guy as like actually a B, actually a C. But like if it released in any other tier, then it would be D for the hubris angle and like putting bad people in the first turn. But since like it being kind of easy isn't a problem when it's releasing alongside a whole other tier that is also kind of easy. So I edged it up to B because of that. Okay, Queen Eternal. Quite controversially, I do not like this fight. This is one of my harder takes. I do not like this fight. And like, even though I like that they made a wall boss with a small hitbox to actually work for uptime and stuff, I don't think I like the whole fight. And the reason why I don't like this fight is because of Ice Phase. It's because of Ice Phase. I'm not even gonna try and mask it as something else. That phase was like... This was the start of me kind of being like, I feel like the line between extreme and savage is being blurred a little bit. Because, like, the way this is meant to work is that, like, within a same tier, like, the extremes are meant to be easier than the savages, and then the savages are meant to be easier than the ultimates. And then the unreals are the easiest thing. Easier than the extremes, even. But, like, there's this one particular set of mechanics in this fight that's like, it is harder than anything in Black Cat, probably harder than anything in Honey Bee. And I might even say it's harder than anything in Brute Bomber. Like, even though a lot of the rest of the fight is good, like, there's this one gravity part where, like, you can, like, float up or go down, and then there's holes in the wall, and then you need to line yourself up with the right hole in the wall to survive the hit and not get thrown out of the arena. But then it's still pretty easy. There's another one where, like, the floor can change into a lot of different shapes. But what that ended up being is people AFK in one particular spot and then do a tiny adjustment when the floor is actually around. Because people ended up placing markers that correspond to spots that are always safe, regardless of the floor path that survives. So that ended up being pretty easy too. And the one hard mechanic that, like, actually maybe might have required some support skill and stuff, that mechanic ended up being completely and utterly humiliated with a threat that was all just that was kind of basically this. So this is the arena. Imagine that the boss is at the top like that. You're meant to be using the whole space for this mechanic and having people far apart, but also close together. Because there's flares which do more damage to people that are close, and then there's stack markers that need multiple people in them. So I think they were expecting something like flare in the corner, flare in corner, flare in corner, flare in corner, guys in the middle with the stack. But while also dodging ground AoEs. What actually happened is everyone goes in the corner, the ground AoE appears, everyone goes slightly less in the corner, ground AoE appears, everyone moves slightly out, ground AoE appears, and then they do that all the way to the other side. And while the healers just heal and the tanks mid. I believe that after enough time, this even ended up being the poster for the mechanic. Like, it started off as an LB usage by the tank, and then people realized that you don't need that if you kitchen sink. So then people just started kitchen sinking that. This fight was completely and utterly humiliated. Like, when I say that it's only one mechanic that calls the difficulty into question, I genuinely mean that it was only one mechanic. The rest of the fight is so fucking easy. It's like what you'd expect from an extreme, but then one particular set of mechanics is like 4th turn difficulty. But then looking at the criteria like this, I almost can't drop it down that far, because, like, is it fun? Well, that depends if you find it fun to break stuff and, like, feel like you're breaking the game, like, almost like in a single-player RPG way. Personally, I feel like I prefer to feel like I'm fighting for my life, and this fight kind of feels like normal outside of Ice Phase. So, like, is it fun is kind of debatable. Is it well designed? Absolutely not. Not only is it not meeting the difficulty expectation, of course that's different here, but it's also not really a consistent difficulty within itself. And I kind of feel like that's a problem. Like, if you're gonna do an extreme that's way harder than a Savage, like, at least commit to it. At least kind of have it somewhat coherent. Like, oh, this is a hard one, guys. But they kind of didn't do that. It's just one mechanic that kind of breaks the fight for a lot of people. Memorable is another question. Because, like, the only memorable thing about the Queen Eternal, the whole part where Book Lamont breaking in and be like, Spin, listen to me! You probably saw people dunking on that over at launch if you were following the situation. They cut that from the extreme mode. The only memorable thing in this fight is not from the extreme, it's from the normal. And that's not what we're considering here. So, like, not only is it not memorable, like, the extreme is negative amounts of memorable. And is it balanced and not AIDS? I don't know, because, like, the boss isn't AIDS, but I think we might be AIDS towards the boss. So I wouldn't count that as being balanced. I don't know, I dunked on it basically the whole time, right? I feel like we might be looking at an F. Like, this fight is a complete... This fight is a complete case study on why the difficulty boundaries of each label are actually important to maintain, and why fights need to be consistently difficult within itself. Like, the way I see it. Like, a lot of the time, like, a lot of the time people were pushing new raiders into this fight. I'd see this time and time and again. People would push new raiders into this fight as their first experience, and they'd drop off raiding altogether. And considering that this fight was the extreme at the same time Byoko was the unreal, I don't know, I think I'd rather have people in Byoko than this. Because, like, even if it kind of gives them hubris, like, that's better than them stopping raiding altogether and maybe quitting. It's better than that. Like, I think these two fights were even my example in the original, in my guide to how to start raiding. Like, these two fights were at the same time. One of them was way too easy. One of them was way too hard. Therefore, it's better to just start straight away, go straight into Savage. Sometimes. And, like, I was a tiny, like, 10 sub Angie back then. Nobody fucking knew who I was. Nobody cared what I had to say. Like, even though it's barely anyone now, like, genuinely it was not a single person back then. So, a lot of people were thrown at this fight, thrown out of the nest, so to speak. And then, if they were thrown at another fight, they might have flown, but because they were thrown at this fight, they fell straight on the floor and died. Oh, sorry, should I say unalived? I don't know if YouTube is still doing that whole censorship thing. But yeah, I think that more importantly than anything like tangible design-wise that it did, this fight is responsible for a lot of people who would otherwise have been raiding and still be raiding to this day, not raiding at all after that. And, like, even though I like some elements, like the gravity pod and the war changes, I think I like what this fight is, but I hate what it represents enough to put it in F tier in spite of that. We need another tier right here for fights I didn't do or hear about. And Futures Rewritten Ultimate is the first one to go straight in. Because I tried to get a group for this, because I did end up clearing Wicked Thunder. But the one group that would actually take me, or the one group that really actually trialed me, Raid lead was misogynist. Did not work well. And then I couldn't really make my own group at that time because I hadn't cleared Wicked Thunder yet. So I couldn't really, in good faith, promise a starting time, so I couldn't make a group for that. But then also, by the time I had cleared Wicked Thunder, I was way behind the curve, and like a lot of people wanted to be more serious than I was. A lot of people wanted to mandate voice, like I raid mute because of harassment in the past. But a lot of people wanted to mandate voice. A lot of people wanted to lock out certain jobs that I might have been more comfortable on. Stuff like that. Kind of there was a lot of factors for me not doing this fight. But I was still completely engaged in the game at the time that it was current, and I would totally have done it had the opportunity presented itself. Cloud of Darkness, though, is kind of a hard one to rank, because I think, like, this is a Chaotic Alliance. It's the first and only, so far, Chaotic Alliance. And when a lot of people think Chaotic Alliance raid, they think bad, but they don't think bad because of anything in the fight. They think bad because of the reward structure, or because of the mismarketing. And I guess I'll go over those, because, like, it's important. The reward structure was, like, basically, when you do the fight, you would get some of a currency that would, like, let you buy some cosmetics or buy some gear. And you would get one of this currency at base, but you would get 2 extra for every person who was new to the fight. So what this meant on release is that you could get a fight that was like, you could get into a raid, lock your raid to only people who haven't cleared, and you could get 49 of the currency on your first run. And then by helping other groups, you could still get a lot of the currency very easily. But on the other hand, if you as a new player are getting carried by people who have cleared, then you only get 3 of the currency. And then if you re-clear it with nobody who's new, you only get 1 of the currency, as opposed to 49 for the initial clear. It was very, very skewed toward the initial clears and the helping new people angle. But then, because of a lot of stuff where it was kind of perceived as bad, that not a lot of people wanted to do it, so they eventually ran out of new players interested in this content, and now nobody can farm it. Unless they're content with only getting 1 of the currency per clear. The stuff for the currency costs like 50 to 99, by the way, so it's a pretty hefty farm if you're doing re-clears with a full group who's cleared. But on the marketing of this fight, I guess the marketing is kind of fight design, because like it's like not meeting the difficulty projection. Alright, gotta go. Went back and Saturday night because school and stuff. I hope you rest well. Thank you for watching for so long. But like a lot of the stuff with Cloud, with the marketing, it's like this was meant to be kind of parallel to a first turn Savage or second turn, like somewhere between those. And like a lot of people interpreted that to mean, like, especially people who were, like, this was the first tier, which was a lot of people because it's the first tier of the expansion. A lot of people interpreted that to mean that it would be, like, between Black Cat and Honeybee. So it's still very easy. But, like, pretty much everything in the fight was, like, harder than something in Brute Bomber or Wicked Thunder. So they really missed the difficulty projection. But they also said that this fight... Why is it not playing the music? Yes, please continue watching the music. Can't believe YouTube is doing that. How do I turn that off, by the way, if anyone knows? What was I saying? Yeah, they also said that you could do this fight with 12 people and you didn't need the max 24. That was a complete lie. While you can enter the duty with 12 people, you will immediately wipe 2 towers. What towers are is... it's like a circle or like another marker. Somebody has to be standing in that or it will explode on the entire party. But if somebody is in that, then it only hits them. And there are 24 of those, meaning that you need 24 people to do the fight, because you need to get past that mechanic. So they just completely lied in the marketing that you could do it with less. And, like, I think, well, maybe I shouldn't take the marketing at its word. I mean, it's Square Enix after all, and also Mr. Ultima designed this fight, and he's notorious for overshooting difficulty expectations. But I prefer not to think that Square Enix would straight up flat out lie like that. So I think that it is a better faith reading of their characters to see it as a failure of the fight instead. And I am gonna drop it F tier for that. Suzaku. Suzaku is the start of the Cruiserweight tier. This is a clean split from everything on the list so far. Like, all of this stuff up here, no longer current content. Out with the old, in with the new. Also, the design wants us to do. Hey, that rhymed. Suzaku, before I even start talking about this, vibes want me to put her in A. Even though I didn't give this fight much of a shot, it seemed to be a lot healthier of a fight to put new players into. And that's kind of Unreal's role, so it's good that it's doing that. It was a fair bit harder than Byakuya, but not to the point of being unfair, not to the point of being inaccessible. The DPS check was... well, we'll get to the DPS check after. A lot of the mechanics were quite simple to understand. It would be like the hardest part is like there's some runes on the outside, and like there's a bird flying, and when the bird hits the rune, then it explodes part of your floor. So you have to not be on that color of floor. And like the mechanics were very easy conceptually, but like they met in such a way that kind of justifies the high-end label. And I like that kind of mechanic. That's kind of the Raja's deal as well. This was kind of as a Raja of a fight. One major flaw, though, is the DDR section during the intermission, where like there'll be an arrow on the floor and you have to face that way to get a damage buff, otherwise the boss gets damage buff. And like there were 10 of those happening, and like it was pretty fast. But the problem with it is because it was that fast towards the end, it became impossible with my ping and with a lot of other people's ping. So, like on the last hit of the DDR, like on the 9th hit, I'd get that right, I'd get the 9. But then the last hit is like right there. And the arrow on the ground has not appeared yet for that last hit. So when it appears, and I could turn to the arrow immediately, and the game, because of my ping, will still not have registered me facing that direction. And so, if I lay back and react to the telegraph like how you're meant to play the game, that would never give me the damage buff, even though I did it right. It would always give the damage buff to the boss. The only way that I could ever get the damage buff on that last hit is guess. Before the arrow has even appeared, I had to guess what the direction was. 25% chance that I get the damage buff. 75% chance that the boss would get it instead. And I did not have many sessions on this fight. I had like 1 or 2 with my static. And then I didn't go back in because I didn't want to PF because of the ping thing with the DDR section. So like in the 2 sessions that I had on this fight, we weren't actually that clean on it yet. Because it takes a lot more time to do that, you know? And because of we got to the point where the one stack of damage up from the DDR section that I was not getting was the difference between us clearing and enraging. And we could not get cleaner than that because we only had 2 sessions. So we did not end up clearing this fight because of a failure on the game's part and not mine. So I'm torn on where to put this, because like, other than the DDR section, this is a completely immaculate Unreal fight that I would have put in these. But the DDR section, like, how bad is is the DDR section so bad that I want to drop it multiple tiers? Or like just the one? Because like based on vibes, I want to put it in A, but I don't know. Do I like this as much as Honey Bee? No, I probably don't. Do I like it as much as Brute Bomber? Yeah, probably. Do I like it as much as the Ralja? That's possible. That's possible. Like even in spite of that critical failure, I do like this fight a lot. It's definitely better than all these. Although, and I'm gonna step back for a second and say that, like, with more time, we probably would have got cleaner, and we probably would have actually cleared, and the DDR thing would not have been as big of a deal. So I'm gonna put her in A, bottom of A. Zelenia. Zelenia is one of those fights where it's like, I look at this and I go, yeah, that is an extreme in terms of difficulty. And I think that's so rare among extremes. Like, usually they either undershoot it by a fair bit or overshoot it by a lot, but like Zelenia is the perfect difficulty for an extreme. And it has a lot of staples, like there's a mechanic with some fixed arbitrary positions. There are lines on the floor. It has some YOLO spread. It has some fixed spread. It has all sorts of stuff that is like common and high end. But also the mechanics that are kind of unique to this fight, like the ads part with the rosebuds or whatever they're called. And then a boss cleave, that's unique. The, what is it? What was I gonna say? The part with the floor tiles and then the rose explosion with the light making the whole floor lightning, that was unique too. And like, I feel like out of all the extremes, this expansion, this one probably does it best at like teaching raiding to new people and like getting new people into raiding altogether. It is very fun. I'd say it's well designed. Is it memorable? Well, I guess it's memorable if you've played Final Fantasy IX, because like it's very inspired by Beatrix. This is a Beatrix fight you can finally win, and the music will probably mean a lot to you with that. But like in terms of mechanics, I only know the broad strokes, but like it extremely met the difficulty expectation, and it's definitely very balanced. Like, I don't know. I feel like we're looking at an S tier here. I genuinely feel like we're looking at an S tier. Okay, after that few seconds wait, I don't have any second thoughts. I'm dropping it there. Just dropping it there. Dancing Green. I remember saying some pretty bad stuff about this fight, about mechanic responsiveness, but all of the problems this fight has are in no way exclusive to this fight, and they're actually pretty small in the grand scheme of things compared to the good. Firstly, the music syncs up to the mechanics perfect. I want to see if I can get that video up. What was the Brute Bomber guy? That guy. I don't know what was in my history there. If it was still BDM test, then I apologize. Has this guy made a Dancing Green video? Because if he has, that would be very convenient. Dancing Green. Where's Dancing Green? There. Does he listen to this?
Are you ready to get down?
Yeah, the music like kicks up as soon as they pull the boss. And now listen to this. As soon as he starts these raid words. Okay, no, it's the next set. No, my bad.
Dancing Green is pulling out all the stops with these steps. We're just getting
Yeah, listen to this. As soon as he starts doing these cleaves. Yeah! See? The way the music like syncs up with those hits. Like the apologies for the model mishap. You get what I was trying to do. You get what I was trying to do though.
bask in the spotlight and burn, baby, burn! An invitation to dance. How will the challenger respond?
Can we skip a bit forward? Maybe. I want to see the later mechanic.
On with dancing.
I want to see the part that I'm thinking of here. Yeah, this mechanic was really fun, by the way. Like, 10 out of 10 mechanic, genuine. Like, if everyone gets this one right, then there's a thing you can do where you actually get a free gauge of LB. I don't know if these guys did it. Probably not, because of the weakness on the Astro. No.
Groovy moves. The crowd's loving it.
And it's still burned into my head though. What are you trying to do? Put the crowd to sleep? The voice line that he does if nobody gets it right. That is still so funny to me.
On the dance floor, everyone's a star.
But yeah, very, very memorable character. Very good, like, music syncing to mechanics. Because, like, that's also a thing in a lot of ult. And I find that, like, when I'm doing an ultimate, I end up remembering where I am in the fight because of where I am in the music. And what that does for me is, like, I end up like, if I forget where I am, I can just listen to the music and be like, oh, this is next, because this part of the music is next. Or if I listen to the song outside of the raid, I see the mechanics. Like, genuinely, when I get to that part of the part of the Dancing Green, I hear him say, oh, what are you trying to do? Put the crowd to sleep? Even though it's not part of the song that he says that. Like, it's just, it really, like, pulls on the memory association. And that's also a factor with Wicked Thunder, since it's not a door boss. The music in P2 is also synced to the mechanics there. But yeah, with Dancing Green, this being a thing for the whole fight, actually, like, it's something that I wasn't expecting, but really appreciate. And the mechanics themselves were really fun. Like, we saw the one where they were dodging the broom cleaves and then going in for the stack. That was really fun. The spotlights on the floor was fun. The ones with the frog line drawn on the floor, that was fun. This is one of the fights that I made a guide on, by the way. But, like, even though I was kind of unfair to it for the responsiveness, like, I can see beyond that now. And, like, this is a problem in the whole game. Like, I do not see it as a problem exclusive to this fight. It is just part of the skill expression of the game to work around poor responsiveness on mechanics. IMO. So, like, with all that good and, like, pretty much next to no negative, like, I I think this is an S minus. This is like S minus. But it is going up. It is sharing the throne with Zelenia. Now Sugar Riot. Remember how I was like with Blue Bomber? I said something like, it tested a skill that's not really been tested before, and it did it in a really good way. Sugar Riot is what happens if you do it in a bad way. And I am, of course, talking about her ads phase. Because, like, not only has ads and, like, target prioritization and AoE optimization per target and a bunch of all that other stuff, and the targeting system itself, not only is that untested in high-end, like melee uptime, but unlike melee uptime, it's also not tested whatsoever in low-end either. So people will get to this point of the game and get into this savage fight, and it will be the first time that they've ever needed to use an AoE ever. And I don't know, I kind of feel like that's the game's fault for allowing that, for facilitating that, and for not building that skill sooner. But also, the fight designer of this fight kind of had to acknowledge that this was going to need to be a factor. Like with the target prioritization and the target system and the AoE optimization and the tanks also needing to position the things well and a bunch of other stuff going on at the same time. Like, this is another thrown from nest moment, I suppose. And like, if they put me in charge of doing that, like, as the fight designer of this fight, I'm looking at what they've got, and I'm seeing, like, this is completely untested. This is probably not a good idea. We should really soft launch this kind of ads phase in an extreme first. Maybe make it a bit less strict, have people build, but still enough so to build the skill necessary. Like, Trial by Fires, I can see the vision in an ultimate, which is like static content, but Savage, especially in early, like this is the second turn of Cruiserweight. Like, Savage is supposed to be the puggable one that you do with randoms. So like, having this as your Trial of Fire, I don't know, I don't like it. I really don't like the prospect. And like, even beyond that, you gotta compare this to other second turns. Like, is the Slime Girl better than Honeybee? No, she's not. Is she better than P10 with the house guy? No, she's not. Is she better than Snake Lady in P6? No, she's not. Is she better than the faceless monster in P2? No, she's not. Like, not only is it completely unhealthy, period, but it's also kind of weak for a second turn. But then let's look beyond that one phase, because maybe it's got some redeeming qualities outside of that. No, it's kind of a Queen Eternal of a fight, where everything outside of that phase is kind of standard. Except the river phase. Fuck the river phase. Fuck the river phase. Like, if you saw the Red Mage change in 7.4, where they made the Manification give range to their physical combo, and you're wondering, well, why the hell did they do that? Red Mage could always burst properly before. This fight is the reason they did that. Because the whole thing with River's face is like, range would when they ranged disengaged, they would be disengaged for the entire phase and they would not get to hit the boss a single time. And that's it. So Red Mage, with its required melee in its burst, would not get to do that. And it would just not be able to burst properly. So it was kind of bricked for that mechanic, and it was kind of bricked for that fight. And while there is an angle of like where you give your Red Mage the melee spot for that mechanic so they can actually do their burst properly, PF was not going to do that. Because PF is PF and very rigid. It's like, I kind of think that the intended design angle at this point was that you would build strats yourself to fit your specific need. Like if you had a Red Mage, you'd have them in melee at that point and you'd have a 3 range comp. So that your Red Mage can actually get uptime and be an optimal Red Mage. But building strats to the specific group's need is kind of goes against the pug nature of PF and like needing and like that being the Savage being the one that you can do in PF. It kind of goes against that. So people naturally didn't do it. And what this Red Mage change represents is like Red Mage didn't need the change in a vacuum. But the intended way to play Red Mage was to change strats to better suit yourself. And the community did not allow that, and that's why Red Mage was changed. I believe the same thing happened with Black Mage going from light heavyweight into cruiserweight. I believe that was the reason that Black Mage received that rework. Because the intended way to play Black Mage was to redesign the group strats to better suit yourself, and PF did not allow that. In case you couldn't tell by the negative tone, I'm putting this fight in F tier. No, didn't do. Roots abominate. This one is kind of difficult to talk about. Without, actually, I'm gonna save this guy till later. I'm saving this guy till later. There's a reason I put it there. Specifically, just to foreshadow us a little bit. Foreshadowing's a literary device, after all. Howling Blade is the thing that I hinted at earlier, where, like, Wicked Thunder not being a door boss meant it needed to pull punches. Howling Blade is what happens when you don't do that. And, like, I kind of like what it was going for. I really do. Even though this fight kind of encroaches on ultimate difficulty. Like, through, I can't really make the comparison there. And it didn't have a parallel ultimate, because no ultimate was released during Cruiserweight. But if you were to compare Howling Blade to something like Uwu, the level 70 ultimate, Howling Blade is harder. If you were going to compare it to something like Ucarb, the other 70, Howling Blade is harder. If you were to compare it to T, Howling Blade is harder. And like, we kind of touched on this briefly with Queen Eternal, where words kind of stopped meaning things in relation to extreme versus savage, and there's not really a distinction anymore, and like the fights could really fall anywhere. Howling Blade, I feel, represents Savage and Ultimate no longer having a meaningful distinction either. Like, if I had to, like, if somebody was coming to me, like, oh, can you believe it? This person said that there's no difference between Savage and Ultimate. What an idiot. This would be the fight that I point to defend the person being called an idiot. But again, and this is like kind of step into the second thing. Same as Wicked Thunder. If the fights were separate phases, I would view them very differently. I would appreciate phase 1's very fast and nature. I would find it very satisfying to optimize it. And phase 2, it would probably be kind of... I don't know where I'd put it, honestly, because, like, I don't really see the vision with phase 2. And the main reason why I don't see the vision with phase 2 is because it has teleporters. Now, I haven't really touched on this in a video before, but teleporters in this game are one of those things kind of like bullet hells, where they don't really work if you have high latency. You have high ping. Let's switch back to this. Where if you have high latency, then the teleporters don't really work like they're meant. So what they'll end up doing instead is just, there will be a huge delay between you stepping on the teleporter and it actually taking you to your spot. And during that delay, it is the act of stepping on the teleporter on your client that locks your GCD actions. Well, it locks all of your actions, actually. After you step on the teleporter, on your client, you cannot take action until the teleporter has carried you to the other side on server side. So, if you have high ping, and you are doing a fight with teleporters, not only are you slower to move, completely out of your control for a reason, you are also potentially losing more uptime, also completely out of your control, for no reason. And I struggle. Like, teleporters are that bad of a fuck up that I struggle to, in good faith, put a fight with teleporters above FT. So, like, phase 1, even though I really like fastness, I really like how fun it is to optimize within, even though I really, really, really like that phase, because there is no door boss on this fight, it is a fight with teleporters, therefore it goes in FT. Now, going into this, well, this is where we kind of reach the end of the story. For now, at least. Because this is when I unsubbed for the first time. Ever, actually. Since I started in Stormblood. So, because I was unsubbed for the entire patch of 7.3, and because Unreals disappear and are replaced with the next one after each patch, I did not get to do Stare You at all. And since coming back, I have also not attempted Necron or Guardian Arcbelt. Final verse is the Pilgrim's Traverse Quantum fight. It's like an alternate version of the Floor 99 boss from Pilgrim's Traverse, but like a harder version. Well, like, you can like tune the offerings, and like if you offer more stuff, then the fight is harder. And the idea was that if you offer 15, which is the minimum, then it would be like an extreme trial. But if you offer 40, which is the maximum, then it would be equivalent to an ultimate. But we'll talk about 40 first, because yeah, it met the difficulty projection. This is an ultimate. This fight is an ultimate fight, straight up. Even though it's a bit shorter, and like a lot of what makes ultimate hard is the length, so a lot of people would hesitate to call it that. A lot of the mechanics in this fight are actually harder than anything in Savage. Anything in any Savage ever. Like, first off, there are 2 bosses, and you need to manually balance the health. Like, this is kind of like a council fight. You need to manually balance the boss's health, because if they go too far apart, then they will do more damage, and eventually they'll just straight up kill you if they get too far apart. So it's Hand of Pain. It's Hand of Pain from T, basically, across the whole fight. The problem is, and I'll bring up Paint again for a moment. The thing with T is that Hand of Pain wasn't a problem, because the 2 bosses would be very close. Like this. So you could very easily switch target, you'd always be in reach of both, and it would be very easy to switch between both. But this fight... Oh, this fight. So imagine this square as the arena. Right. This is boss... Okay, it's not that big. But this is boss 1. This is boss 2. And there are like these puddles on the ground that will give you a debuff. And like, you step in a puddle, you get the buff that allows you to attack that given boss. I believe that's how it works. But the main problem is, like, one boss would be light, and one boss would be dark. And like, let's say you are here for a mechanic. If you are a melee or a tank, you can only attack that boss. You cannot reach up there. You cannot reach. So you can't attack that boss. Meaning if that boss has higher health than that boss, you either need to not attack at all, ever, or you just wipe because you keep bringing the lower boss down even further. T has nothing like this. Absolutely nothing. The only time where you can't attack the other boss in T, the only time you can't switch, is if you're playing Reaper. That's literally the only time. But for this fight, like, if you know the mechanic is coming up where you have to be there, then it ends up being really finicky. Because you either need to, like, pre-damage that boss, you either need to pre-damage this boss so that you can hit this one more after, or... Well, there's no or. You have to do that if you want to maintain your uptime. And if you are in a pug group, you cannot really do that. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, I mean, I guess I see the vision, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Because I guess this is fine for a fight that's meant to be ultimate. Like, it's not as long as an ultimate, but like this mechanic, this one single mechanic is harder than anything in any fight ever in 14. This right here is the hardest mechanic in Final Fantasy XIV history. Like, it ends up being really finicky because then you have to like be in a static and tune your group, tune your damage. Or if you're pugging, then you just eat the loss and never end up hitting, never get full uptime. It's very, it's a weird one. It's a weird one. Well, let's say that. Well, what about Quantum 15 then? If Quantum 40 is an ultimate, then surely Quantum 15 will be an extreme. Nope. Quantum 15 is also an ultimate. It just has slightly less incoming damage. Yes, really. They really did that. And I guess before we drop it in F tier, I do have to shout it out for one thing. It is a 4-man. It is a 4-man piece of high-end content, so it shines a lot of light on some underappreciated jobs. Like, there's the whole thing with the... What is it? What was I going to say? Like, early in Dawntrail, a lot of people valued tanks based on how much damage they did, and utility was never really a consideration. Because of, in normal fights, you have 2 tanks, and so you've got way more than enough stuff to deal with anything. But in this fight, Paladin actually took the top spot because of utility, funnily enough. Even though it did less damage, you were the solo tank, so you were more willing to sacrifice that for extra utility. And Paladin did give enough of a utility bonus to where people considered it to where if you were playing, like, if you were not playing Paladin, you would kind of stop griefing. Then again, the healers kind of have the opposite effect, where because it's like, because of the whole regen and shield healer thing, shield healers have way more raw healing than pure healers do have shields. So it was like, you effectively have to play a shield healer in this. And while it did shine some light on Sage, which was very underappreciated in Big Dollar, usually, it also made White Mage and Astro complete throw picks in the fight, because there's no shield healer to carry you. And like, I kind of like that this kind of brought the best out of some underappreciated jobs, but I don't know, because like, look, with the targeting thing, I'm not complaining about the difficulty of targeting between things, and I'm not complaining about the uptime struggle. I think those are good things. But what I don't like about the constant need to retarget is the targeting system itself. This is something that truly you can only really appreciate how bad this is if you go into the fight yourself. Because like, you need the full boss on your screen to actually switch to it. So like, while you're juggling a bunch of fast mechanics and you're juggling your puddle debuff and you're balancing the damage, you then also have to worry about wrangling your camera for a janky in-game system during all of this. And I don't know, I don't like that. I really don't like that. Again, this is way less egregious in T because the 2 bosses are inside each other for 90% of the fight. So I kind of feel like it's a failure on this fight's part, not for having the need to manually balance bosses, not for having the debuff thing to damage them, but for having the bosses so far apart. It's like, I like the ideas, but I hate pretty much everything about the execution. I guess that looks like a B to you? A D to you, rather. I guess that looks like a D to you. Tsukuyomi. This was the fight that I came back for. This was when the friend got me back. And one of the first things I did was this fight. Like, I got crafted gear from my friend, from a different friend than the one that paid my sub. I made Courtly on all my jobs. And then I went straight into this fight. And I do kind of like it. It's one of those where, like, it's kind of a Queen Eternal of a fight, but in a good way. Because the one hard mechanic that's really hard is, like, still within the realm of an extreme range mechanic. The meteors. Other than meteors, it is kind of like just memorization and kind of winging it. But, like, there is still a major thing you have to learn in the fight to get by. There is still a lot of endurance checks. There's still a lot of memorization beyond that. Like, I think it's a good first introduction to raiding. I think it is a good first introduction to raiding. But looking at the tiers we have here, it's like, do I think this is better than Byakuya? Yeah. Do I think it's better than Balagon Manza? I don't know. I kind of feel like it's better than Black Cat. But maybe not Balagon. I kind of like this. I feel like I like this. Dawntrail. It has teleporters, therefore it is F tier. No further discussion will be had on this. I don't like how empty my C tier is. Van Fatale. I guess I could just read a passage from the incoming video essay on it. Because I wrote at length about this fight. Let me scroll down to this fight. And then I started the tier off on a very high note. It was generally well paced. Vamp Stomp's a great use eyes mechanic. Ether letting is super fun. I still actually talk about what these things are, actually. A Vamp Stomp is like, you will jump to the middle of an arena and like, it will send like a sound wave, and then when this hits some bat guys, then the bats will explode and like hurt you nearby. But it will also explode you when it reaches you. So you have to you have to get exploded, but like not at the same time as other players, and also not in the range of bats. It is a very satisfying mechanic to get right. Ether letting is like there's some pizza slices and you drop an AoE at the corner of the pizza slice, and like the AoE will then explode into a cross or a plus, but the pizza slice positions make the AoEs kind of resolve themselves. That's satisfying too. Sadistic Screech 2 is an ad phase done right. Because what will happen there is like some towers will appear, and then those towers will explode into ads, which you then have to kill. And like the DPS track is not tight on this. Like it's free when you compare it to something like M6, but the randomness of the placement and the need of the towers and the explosions and the boss casting Great Bites during this, it's like, this will still make you pay attention come week 1 million. This will not be trivialized by gear. And I like this about it. And they do always spawn in a way that lets you take full advantage of like AoE and cleave and stuff, so I like that. Gay Baby Jail, as I've been calling it, or aka Hell in a Cell, is also a great spectacle. Basically what will happen here is another tower, but then when you take that tower, you get put in a cell, the titular cell, where you have to fight against an ad that only you can attack. You are basically 1v1ing this ad after you take the tower, and there's other mechanics going on at the same time. Very fun, very good spec. I also, going into negatives, I don't really like Sanguine Scratch. That's like, it's basically the intermission from M4S, where like she does the cones and then the safe spot for the next one is the one that was just cleaved and vice versa, and then it just keeps going. But I don't like it when I did like M4, because this one is like, this one also has a bat moving that you're tethered to, and it's like, you know those escort quests in games where the NPC's walk speed is, it's faster than your walk speed but slower than your run speed, so you have to keep alternating in order to actually keep pace? It's that, but for the entire last half of the fight. And it's so fucking annoying. And it also really overstays its welcome. There's also not really any of the fundamentals, like the stacks, the spreads, the whatever. But I don't know if that's a negative. I don't know if I put that as a negative or if I put it as a positive. I think I might rearrange what we've got here quickly. I think I actually put Zeralja in S tier as well. S minus. But it's kind of like I said in the Black Hat section, Van Fatale also somewhat suffers from first turn curse. Like this is a really hard, really annoying mechanic late in the fight. Well, not that hard, but really, really annoying mechanic late in the fight, where if you It's a really annoying mechanic, really late in the fight. And once it's skippable, it will become the automatic assumption that you are skipping it. Though, what I will say is that this fight is kind of a P7. It's the tree lady. And like... but going back to that for a minute. This is an Endwalker fight I'm talking about, but like... It's kind of... It's a fair difficulty throughout most of the fight, but then... there were harvests late in the fight. These 3 mechanics called harvests, and they were so annoying to prog. Because like the early stuff would put you the fuck to sleep, and then the later stuff was just kick your ass. Basically, this was a 3rd turn with 1st turn curse. If that makes sense. But then, as people got gear and as people got better, harvests started to be skipped. And then, in the world where we're skipping harvest, I start liking this fight a lot more. And I actually, completely against the will of my friends and they thinking I'm insane for doing it, I put that fight in S tier. So, I think, and I feel even more strongly about Van Patel, like, with the exception of Sanguine Scratch, this is the best first turn we have ever had in terms of the difficulty projection since E5, back in Shadowbringers, back before the free trial expansion. I think that was even before COVID, actually. Yeah, this was the first time they have gotten a first turn difficulty right since COVID. Actually, I don't think I'm allowed to say that word on YouTube. Think about it. I still rate this turn very highly. I think as things stand, it's an A tier. But under the assumption that people will be skipping this... Under the assumption that people will be skipping Sanguine Scratch, the fight then becomes S tier. I will actually check the timeline for this fight and against the FF logs. Hold on. Timeline. Spreadsheet. Because they geologged Imgur for some unfathomable. Why am I so zoomed in? Hello? M9. Sanguine Scratch starts at the 7:38. So if the base runs kill at around that time, then the fight is S tier. FF logs. I'm gonna go off the best clear. If the best clear is less than that amount of time, then the fight is S tier. We're looking at 7:30, 7:41. 7:41 is when the mechanic starts. So if the fastest kill is less than 7:41, then the fight is S tier. Statistics. No, rankings. I needed rankings instead. Speed all bosses. No, speed, Van Fatale. 7:30. And 7:32. Wait, how the fuck did they do it with 7-man? Hello? How the fuck have they 7-manned it? Huh? Huh? Oh, it just bugged the fuck out. I see. And so they actually did have another person. But yeah, it's skippable. Therefore, fight is S tier. And probably above these two. Probably even above. No, not above Zelania. Not above Zelania. Extremes. The Blowdog Brothers, I should be calling them. I don't know where this extreme name has come from. We all know what they're really called. But this is kind of a fight that I'm mixed on. Because I really like what it does in theory. I really like them as characters. I really like them a lot of the moment to moment. I like a lot of the mechanics. Like the snake phase that I made a guide on. That is not the trial that is currently in use in the... Oh yeah, I made one for that as well. That is also not in use. But the snake phase I really like. I like that it's like kind of random, but not. And I like how chaotic it can be. Like, it feels almost free flow at times. But like, it's complicated enough that you need a strat. But it also kind of wants to be YOLO'd. So like, basically what I'm saying is this fight is PF Kryptonite. And I don't think that's healthy for a first turn, but I kind of like it on a personal level. Actually, I'm going to redefine it here quickly. I'm going to say that C is also C. Full screen. Also C. I admit it's bad, but I like it. Because I think that's where I'm at with this fight. I enjoy how fast it is. I enjoy a lot of the mechanics. I enjoy the snake chaotic phase. And I really like the gay baby jail. This fight has a gay baby jail too. And you can the way this works is like you can kind of pick two people to not have to do the mechanic. And I think that also really benefits statics because of the amount of different ways that you can choose who the two people that don't do the mechanic should be. So it's kind of like, it's kind of really convenient. That's basically the overarching theme of the whole fight. It's really, really awful if you're doing it in PF, but really, really fucking good if you're doing it in a static. Like, extremes in a static S tier, extremes in PF F tier. And like, even though I kind of PF'd it, I can look beyond that to see, God, I really fucking love this fight if I was in a static for it. But then even beyond that, I think the solo phases at the start, like the first 4 minutes of the fight, has each boss individually, and they haven't actually decided to fight together yet. And I think that the individual tutorialization part, like with Red Hot, that doesn't really feel like tutorialization, kind of engaging. But with Deep Blue, the solo Deep Blue section is really boring. It's really boring. But then the rest of the fight is like if you got an static for this tier, if you went to the trouble of finding or founding a static for this tier, this fight is where that pays off. If you have maintained a static for this long, this is when you finally get recognition for your deeds. This is where you feast. This is where you feast. And like a lot of stuff is bad about this fight, but I really like what it represents, and that's why I kind of changed the definition for C tier. I admit that this fight is bad, but I will defend it with my fucking life. I'm also going to drop BR code for this tier as well, because he kind of fits the new definition better. Listeners may remember that I pushed Brute Abominator back to Tyrant. We will talk about Tyrant first. He is kind of... I don't want to say he's mid as fuck, but he's mid as fuck. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And my music stopped again. Of course it did. But yeah, the way a lot of his earlier mechanics are kind of just the same ones from normal, the same weapon cycles that he does. Maybe with a stack or a spread if they're feeling spicy. And it's just generally quite boring. It feels like they phoned it in. It feels like... I've seen this fight described online as the ChatGPT fight. I agree with the reason that it is called that. It's like... The reason people call it that is like if you would go and like, hey, at Grok, make a savage fight. They would make a fight that is better than this. Actually, I'm gonna actually do that. Post. Groove. Design, Final Fantasy 14. Savage. Raid. Encounter. To the best of your ability. It will be the third turn of its tier if that affects your design choices. Oh, we'll see what Grok says in a minute. We'll see if what Grok says is better than the Tyrant. But yeah, first part of this fight, really fucking boring. Kinda free. Second part of this fight, bunch of hard mechanics with body check, back. Well, not body checks, there's like one body check in the fight. And then some kind of hard mechanics. But the main thing in this fight that, like, I think it's within the realm of a third turn. Until you hit Enrage. This is one of those fights where the body checks are so few and far between that once you hit an Enrage at, say, 10%, that means your prog is halfway done. It's one of those fights. And I think, I'm just gonna say here, take a side note, the reason I put Brute Abominator back here is that it is basically the same fight and suffers from the exact same thing, where once you're enraging at 10%, it's halfway done. Brute Abominator, however, I respect the vision beyond that because of the 3-platform thing, even though they don't let you have markers on the third one, but you don't really need them, so it's fine. Like, I respect the vision in Brute Abominator a lot more than Tyrant, enough to differentiate between their tier place. But it's like, I think Tyrant is a case study on why PF being so bad is such a struggle and kind of affects the judgment of fights. Because a lot of people would get stuck on Enrage, so then they go to Tombstone and they're like, they go to their percent, so like say they're Enraged at 6%, then they're like, they make a party finder and be like, Enrage prog 6% is only checking passport. And paradoxically, they're actually the people that say they are Enrage prog are people who will be at Enrage prog. Like, maybe if your 6% group crits out of their fucking minds, then you can get a 5% and then start joining 5% groups, but like, that's just inventing artificial prog points at that point. Why even do it? Why even do it? Why even do it? Truly. Because, like, in your 6% Enragers per checking passport groups, lower Enragers obviously can't join. Late mechanic people that, like, are good damage, they can't join because they're not at Enrage. And anyone that's Enraging not at 6%, well, they're not going to join because, like, if 4% Enrager is not going to join your 6% party when they can make their own 4% party. That's just not the way people are taking it. But the reason I call these prog points kind of arbitrary, and the reason I don't like it, is because a lot of these people that are in these checking passport parties for specific percent Enrages are going to do better in a late mechanic to clear party. By actually, like, the people they are helping to prog will be doing better damage than the people that are checking passport in passport parties. When you join an Enrage prog for like 6%, you are dooming yourself to more 6% Enrages for absolutely no reason when you don't have to whatsoever. Tyrant is kind of a case study to why Tombstone is unhealthy for the scene of PF, and why prog lying, ethically, is actually better and healthier for the game than what Tombstone is. Who would have ever known? I would have known. That's why I've fucking hated Tombstone since the meta thing. I've been a hater since day one. But you also need to think about why does PF suck so bad? And the reason PF sucks so bad is because the jobs are so easy at the minute. And like, I know that a lot of people like Xenos are like, well, you can't call the jobs easy if people can't clear the DPS check on M11. But what those arbiters fail to realize is that easy jobs are the reason people suck. Let me explain. In current content, basically none of the difficulty is from the job, it's all from the encounter. So like, let's say it's 10% from the job and 90% from the encounter. That means that when you are doing like your leveling, when you're doing your daily roulettes, when you're doing normal raids, when you're doing the previous fights, you are practicing on 10% of the future fight because you're practicing your job. and you're getting better at your job all the time. Constantly. So when you get back to that fight, when you get to the future fight, you have to learn 90% of it, because you haven't had got to practice it. But for earlier fights, where maybe it's like from ARR or Heaven's Ward, maybe it's closer to 50-50 in terms of difficulty. That means you are practicing 50% of the fight outside of the fight. So when you get to the fight, even though it's the same overall difficulty, there is less of a gap between a fresh progger and a clear ready person. There is less of a gap, significantly. Even though it's the same overall difficulty. And so the reason people are struggling on like Tyrant is like they are struggling with that 90% because not only is it a hard ass fight, but it's the 90% that they're struggling with. It's a 90% fact. But like if it was 50-50, then like there's room for a fight of the same total difficulty if the spread was 50-50 between fight and job. Because like then you practiced half of the fight outside of the fight, and then you've only got the other 50% from the mechanics to learn. There's less of a gap there, and there's less room for people to get caught in rage hell. And taking it full circle here, the light heavyweight fights that were slammed for being really easy and like dunked on by the whole community for being way too easy on release, I think that these fights would be the perfect difficulty in a world where difficulty was more tended towards the job. Like, if we had way harder jobs, if we had mechanics like player stance and tank damage, deliverance, whatever, and if we had harder DPS rotations, then fights like Black Cat would actually be way healthy in terms of difficulty instead of like too easy as they were planned for. Honeybee Lovely would be healthy in terms of difficulty. A Brute Bomber would be probably where a third turn should be. Wicked Thunder might even get criticized for being too hard in that world. It's like... And like, it's kind of... I know this is something that the community goes back and forth on all the time, like, do we want to do harder mechanics and easier jobs, or do we want to do easier fights and harder jobs? And like, I think Tyrant is no, you didn't completely miss the stream. I think Tyrant is a good taste. Oh hey Ade! I just realized it's you! I've missed you so much. I hope you've been doing well. But I think Tyrant is a good case study on why they should go for easier mechanics, harder jobs. And Black Cat kind of supports it by being what would be the ideal difficulty under a harder job landscape. Like in another world, Black Cat could be like A+, S-. Honeybee Lovely would be like here. Brute Bomber maybe here. And Black Cat would be A tier. And like, it's kind of gone full circle, really. And I think that people saying that the jobs are too hard because people are enraging on Tyrant are really missing the forest for the trees. People aren't enraging on Tyrant because the jobs or the fight are too hard. They are enraging because they are bad, and they are bad because the jobs are easy. And the solution to that is to make the jobs not easy anymore. Because then people would have to practice the jobs in all content in the hundreds of hours of catch-up before Tyrant. So it is the 10% thing game. Like, if more of the fight's difficulty is in the job then there is less of a gap between a fresh progger and a new person, and a clear ready person. And I think that is probably the strongest argument that anyone could ever make on the whole discourse between like jobs easy or fights easy. Now Lindworm. I haven't done this fight, and I haven't heard anyone else on this fight, because usually I'll go through a lot of these tiers myself, but I'll also kind of have readers of sorts that are also like making sure I'm not completely deranged, making sure that I'm like informed on stuff before I speak on it. And like, it's actually because of these people that I saw a lot of the forgiving qualities in Howling Blade first phase, that I saw. It's because of one of those people that I separated Brood Abominator from Tyrant. But this tier's different, because those people are all still enraging on Tyrant. So, I know nothing about this fight. I kind of want to praise it purely for being a door boss, but I know nothing else about the fight to accurately say. Everything burns with an absolute banger though, so there's that. I wonder if Grok replied yet. Grok has not replied. Wait, did Grok reply? Oh hey, Grok replied! Here's the design for the third Savage encounter in a hypothetical Astral Veil Savage tier. Boss is Veil Weaver Astrea, a cosmic weaver manipulating fate thread. Arena, circular starfield platform with dynamic thread lines that so is this like the web bridges from P10? Phase 1, Thread Tangle, dual tank busters on men tank and up tank, followed by spread flares and stack orbs, dodge weaving AoE patterns. So that's kind of fundamentals. Phase 2, Fate Sever, arena splits, groups handle mirror mechanics, e.g. inverted stacks. Bait tethers to cut threads. Wait, I see the vision here. I genuinely see the vision here. Phase 3, Astral Collapse. Enrage buildup with rotating lasers, media drops, and limit cut numbers. Oh, no fucking way, Grok. Pull out the limit cut. Enrage 1030. Heals Klutzel Resurrections. What do you think? Better than M11S. 8 out of 8. I'm a 14 player. I can't count past 8. I said that as a joke. I wasn't expecting Grok to like actually plot a Grok fight that actually goes kind of hard. I was not expecting that whatsoever. But that's the list. Personal ranking. Download image. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Oh, I hit the character limit. Of course I hit the character limit. Did Grog cook up an actually good... Yeah, Grog did cook up an actually good set. Download image. Save. Yeah, that's the list. Maybe I'll regret something about this and end up changing it later. Going up from the bottom, you heard me talk about Tyrant. Doomtrain and Howling Blade have teleporters, and basically the way teleporters work in this game is like, from the moment you step on it, from the moment you're carried to the other side, you are locked in place and locked out of all actions. And that transfer process takes a lot longer if you have high ping. So it's like from the moment you step on your side to when you get carried over on the server side. So if you have high ping, you're being slowed down on your movement for no reason, and you're being like, you're losing uptime as well for no reason. Sugar Riot called upon completely untested skills in an unhealthy way, or in a way that is unhealthy in my opinion. Part of Darkness was a very mismarketed fight. I think if they were honest about the difficulty being very high and it requiring 24 people, it would have been true. I mean, it would have been a lot more generously ranked, but they mismarketed it as being a much easier fight than it was, and they also said it was possible with 12 people, which it's not. Queen Eternal is not only an inconsistent difficulty within its label, but it's also inconsistent within itself. It's a very easy fight overall, except for one really, really, really crushingly hard phase. And I think the inconsistency on both parts is like... The inconsistency in both ways is marked against it. And also, said phase is also kind of a ping thing. And they also kind of removed the one memorable thing about the phase. About the fight, even. Like, it's all in normal, but it's not in Savage, and it's weird. Brood Abominator kind of has the same problem as Tyrant, where it's like the DPS checks the end-all be-all, and then Raging is only half the fight. But I respect its vision outside of that problem enough to separate it from the Tyrant and give it a different tier. I think Brood Abominator is actually salvageable. Final Verse was like kind of listed as having two difficulties, but it's one of those things where both difficulties have the same mechanics, but it's like, unlike other fights in this game where different difficulties will actually have different mechanics, and like the boss will do different attacks and different patterns. The Final Verse, the difficulty things in it are the same, but it's only numbers that change from Quantum 15 to Quantum 40. Like, Quantum 15 was like listed as Extreme, which is like an entry fight. and Quantum 40 was listed as an ultimate, which is like a pinnacle fight. But I think they're both closer to ultimate, personally. Because they do kind of weird shit with the targeting of two bosses. I'm probably going to cut my explanation up into highlights so I don't have to do it again. I hope I get around to that. I really hope I get around to making highlights of this, because I did some goated shit in MS Paint right here. Wicked Thunder is a two-phase fight without a checkpoint. And I generally think that really lets down. If I were to rank both phases separately, then phase 1 would be unquestionably an S tier, but phase 2 would be like maybe a bit lower, maybe a bit higher than it is now, maybe like A or B. But the two-phase problem is kind of twofold. It's because of its own, because you gotta do it in one go. They kind of had to pull punches in terms of the difficulty, and it throws. And 2, you can do a lot more damage in phase 1 and then carry that damage to phase 2 because there's no boss health reset. And what that does is let you skip the only hard mechanics in phase 2. So if you end up doing the fight as it is, then you will end up thinking that phase 2 is completely free. I mean, it kind of is, but at the same time, there are mechanics that exist, you're just skipping them. Like, both phases of this fight would thrive better as separate fights, or like, at least with a checkpoint. Because that's kind of how it works with Lindworm at the bottom, the fight I didn't do. Where there's like a 120 minute, 2 hour shared timer. So like, if you take 30 minutes to kill Lindworm 1, and then when you kill him, a cutscene will play, and then Lindworm 2 spawns, and the checkpoint there. And then you've got 90 minutes to kill Lindworm 2 with that checkpoint. So like, once Lindworm 1's dead, then it's dead for the rest of 90 minutes. But then once the 90 minutes run out, then you have to fight Lindworm 1 again. It is a weird system. It's a system that people kind of end up not really liking when it's there. But people really, really miss it when it's gone. And with Wicked Thunder, it was gone. And people really missed it. I really missed it especially. I wish it was still a door boss. One moment. Yako was kind of an undertuned fight. Oh, not really undertuned, but there wasn't really a lot going on there either. Just beyond that. But it was good for the low difficulty, and the low difficulty was good because it would kind of break people's, like, mental barriers. Because, like, a lot of people would, like, limit themselves from raiding because, like, oh, I don't have it in me, I'm not skilled enough, I can't take it, but you could then take those people into this fight, and it's like, oh, this is the entry fight, the high-end content, just give it a shot, and then if you don't like it, I won't pester you again about it, and then you take them into this fight, and they clear this fight that is, like, almost a normal in terms of difficulty. It's probably closer to normal than extreme. You take them into this fight, and even though they weren't really challenged that much, they would come out of it with the impression of like, oh my god, I can do it. Why did I doubt myself all this time? I'm ready to raid. Like, it kind of tricks people in that way. Like, even though it wasn't really a glimpse into raiding, it makes you think you've had a glimpse into raiding, and it makes you more willing to raid again in the future. And like, even though it's kind of a dull fight, I can appreciate what it is doing for the community. Like, even though I don't really like what it is, I like what it represents. The extremes are only ranked so lowly. Or should I say the Blowjob Brothers? People calling them the Blowjob Brothers. It's kind of a meme. But the extremes are only ranked so lowly because of, well, basically everything in that fight is made for statics. But they are in a difficulty bracket that is meant to be puggable. So they kind of missed the estimate. But like, if you made a static for that bracket anyway, this is where you feast. There's just a few more stacks, then you scale. This is the scale moment. This is the scale. Black Cat, I honestly forgot what I said about Black Cat. Largely inoffensive fight. Kind of memorable. Kind of fun, but not really stand out in terms of design. I liked that a lot of stuff was free flow. Like, Black Cat did free flow in a much healthier way than the extreme. Okay, I got an ad for Final Fantasy XIV on the Final Fantasy XIV tier list. Crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, I honestly forgot what I said about Black Cat. I feel like difficulty was probably one of my complaints, if I had to guess. Why is my memory so fucking... I mean, I guess I've been streaming for 3 hours, but like, why is my memory that bad? I'm so ass at life. Tsukuyomi is one of those fights, like, it's a Queen Eternal of a fight, but in a way healthier way. Because the one hard mechanic in it is not that hard, so I can kind of step back and respect the vision. Like, there's, like, it's not too hard of an overall experience, but like, there's one really hard thing that you've got to memorize the hell out of and remember a strat for. There's also some other miscellaneous memorization that has to be gotten right. And there is also some general DPS check stuff. There's a little ad phase in the middle, be spicy. It does actual damage to you. You need to do actual damage to it. But otherwise, you can kind of wing it. I really like what this fight is for. Actually, I want to change my ranking. I'm already changing my ranking. I'm already changing my mind. I do think this fight is better than Suzaku. But yeah, let's get to Valgamanda. Valgamanda really played up the role fantasy in the first part. Like, there's a tank mechanic where you like physically need to intercept an attack for the rest of the group. And there's a healer group where there's a healer part where there's a lot of incoming damage at once, multi-hit, a bunch of stacks, wild charge, and whatever. And then there's also a persistent dot in the second, like, it lasts the entire second half of the fight, like one thing. And for the DPS, there's also a nails DPS check in the middle. Like, it really plays up the role part of the fight. But the second half is kind of boring. It's kind of just there. Like, the good shit in this fight is really, really front-loaded. For Suzaku, kind of like Tsukuyomi, is like kind of almost perfect for an Unreal fight. But there was one thing that I couldn't really overlook, and there is a ping check mechanic. It's what people call DDR. There's basically like you're standing on a circle and there's an arrow on the circle, and your character has to be in the circle facing that direction. So I can see why they call it DDR, but the reason it's a ping check is because on some of the hits, there is not enough time between you. Excuse me. There's not enough time between you being shown the arrow on the floor and turning to it, and it actually registering that you've turned and giving you the thing. So it will show you the arrow, you will turn, then it will register the orb as hitting you in the first direction before it registers that you've turned. So it will end up giving the boss the stack instead of you of damage up. So the only way for you to get that stack on those hits, if you have high ping, is guess. A 25% chance to guess right. I just guess. And what actually happened with my group, because we only had a couple sessions on this, because we moved to Cruiserweight as soon as it dropped instead of actually staying to clear this fight, is what happened is that I could never get the 10th hit of DDR because of my ping, so I'd always have only a 9 stack of damage up. And what happened to my group is that stack of damage up that I was missing because of my ping was the difference between us clearing and us enraging in a low percent. So we just never cleared the fight over that one ping check mechanic. And I genuinely really like everything else in the fight, except that one thing. And I can admit that like if we had more time on the fight, if we didn't go to Cruiserweight immediately, then we would have been able to clear that fight. Because we would have got cleaner, and then the DDR thing wouldn't have mattered as much. Already talked about Tsukuyomi. Hate to win on a completely different, genuine. It is actually that. It is the Gaijin tax, as my old static started to call it. If you don't live in Japan, you do not stand a chance. Brute Bomber is one of those fights where, like, I really like this fight as melee, because, like, he really disrespects the shit out of your uptime needs and your rotation. It's kind of in character for him, like, I really like his character too. But the one thing keeping him out of S tier is that he got kind of stale on reclears. Like, a Brute Bomber, the prog was S tier, and the reclears were like B or C, averaged out to A. Like, TBH Brute Bomber is like my favorite prog that I've ever done. But it's just that boring of a reclear. And because I cleared this guy like week 6, then we had like months of re-clears to go. And that kind of clouded my memory of it for a while. And it's only when looking back now that I can appreciate, yeah, this fight's actually really good. There's also this one really funny part where it's like, I'm going to pull up a video. What was it?
My Vinted Empire runs on an eye for detail and a no.
I'm gonna see if I can find the one spot again, because I really want to show you this. I think it's here. There's this one really funny moment, like kind of early on in the fight, where he dopes up. He just starts drinking a Monster. And then the ref jumps in and he's like, no, that's naughty. You're disqualified now. And then he turns around and is just like, fuck off, Clanker, and punches him out of the arena. Amazing. Genuinely amazing. Yeah, I really like that fight. I really like it. Honey Bee is like, it's a really good, really memorable fight. I don't really want to dwell on. This was another MS Paint moment where I had to throw that there was a ping check mechanic, and that ping check mechanic is the reason. The ping check mechanic is the reason why she's not an S tier. That is definitely one that I'm gonna cut a highlight of. Because the mechanic that I'm thinking of, it's so BS for reasoning that it's almost funny, but it's still not really pleasant to do. But the rest of the fight, really fun. Really engaging, really memorable character, really good music. Like this one's kind of like Suzaku. It's where it's led down by just one mechanic. Zeralja is really satisfying, where it's like, it's kind of like a puzzle almost, where you're solving your own thing, and it's not really playing on the party synergy, but like you're solving, you have your thing, you're solving it yourself, and you don't really need to interact with the other people around you. Even though you're in a group raid, it's like all 8 of you are doing your own solo fight. And like, even though I initially said that's a disadvantage, I don't strictly think that's a disadvantage. I think that's a really interesting angle for a fight that is actually very engaging and very satisfying to do. So I think I had it initially in A tier, but then I bumped it up to S tier. I love the game mechanic of, oh, you live in the wrong place, you lose. That is a very common trend in this game. And there's this one job, Machinist, where it's like, it's got a very fast using phase, where it's like, you use a fast skill where it's like a 1.5 second recast on your GCD, but then between each GCD you have to weave an OGCD. And like each of those, at base, they have like a 0.5 second, I think it's like 0.6 actually, a 0.6 second like error margin. Oh, 0.6 second animation lock rather. So you have like so like 0.3, 0.6, 0.6 is like 0.12 out of 0.15. So it's like you have a bit of an error margin. You have like a 0.3, a 300-second error margin. But the thing is with this game is that animation lock is actually like, it's not actually 600 milliseconds. It's like 640 milliseconds plus your ping. Plus double your ping, I think it is. So if you have more than like 75 ping, you just cannot play that job because you clip your GCD every single time you go for the weave. Reaper has the same problem, Ninja has the same problem. And a lot of jobs have forced double weaves as well, where you have to weave 2 things, and you also can't do that if your ping's too high. It's like, the list of jobs you can, like, it's like... Like the Australian server in this game, there is an Australian server, but it's completely dead, so most Australian players end up playing on a different region server. Like on NA or EU. And like, if that's you, the list of jobs you can play is like Scholar, Warrior. And that might actually be it. I think that is actually it. Like, there are 2 jobs you can play in the entire game. Maybe Black Mage. Black Mage might be one as well. So 3 jobs. 1 in each role. That are an option if you have high ping. Unless you cheat. Because they have this thing that's like, it's against POS to actually use it and like admit you're using it. But pretty much everyone uses it. And what it does is it fixes the ping drawback on animation lock and just makes it a flat 640 or whatever it is at default. So basically everyone is using this plugin and it's like required to play for most people. And they just don't really, that also leads them not fixing the problem because the plugin exists and people use the plugin. And because people are using the plugin, they're not asking for the actual base game to change because they're satisfied by the plugin. It's a very weird situation that we find ourselves in. It's like we really want to say that mods aren't mandatory, but like, come on. No Clippy, the thing that fixes your ping, that's mandatory. Crafter bots are very widespread now because people have realized just how boring it is. It's like, it's kind of a semi-AFK activity. But like, it's also kind of a fix to a issue as well. Because like the macro system in this game, which is what most people use for crafting, is if you have a single life spike, then the macro is completely out of sync, and you lose your craft. Because like it doesn't actually wait for feedback. Like if your macro fails a command, it doesn't retry that command. It doesn't pause. It just keeps going as if it didn't fail that command. So like, if your macro, like if you life spike on the step that like on the step where you use mend to recover your durability, if you life spike on that step, it doesn't use your mend, but then it will still go for the touch after it and break your item, and you will not get your craft. Or if it lag spikes on a touch, then that might be the difference between your item being high quality and low quality. And the only solution to this macro problem, the only solution to it, is in a plugin that has options to completely automate crafting. So because of that, a lot of people that would not have botted otherwise are now botting. It's a very weird situation. Because, like, I used to find botting annoying because, like, they crash the economy and it's very obvious when they're going around the world, but, like, I can't really blame him anymore. I can't. I took the artisan pill too, and I can't go back. I'm not going back. But back to this list that we're doing. Game design is my passion and game. True. That kind of leads me perfectly into. I've kind of been struggling with this thought for a while and how to articulate it, but I think Final Fantasy XIV might actually be friend slop. You only like it because of the group you're playing it with, and because of the social experience you're having inside it. Mechanically, it's not a very good thing. It's not actually... It's like a lot of other MMOs, it's mechanically not that strong. And it's carried by the social aspect. But unlike other MMOs, they want this to be something that you can play in single player for the story. And they want people in the game who will mainly be playing it for the story. And in my personal opinion, if you want to focus on that side of the player base, you need to really focus on being a mechanically sound experience, and they're not doing that at the moment. There's a lot of, even beyond a lot of the failures we talked about today, there's a lot of anti-synergy in their intention. That's kind of what I'm writing a second feature-length film about, actually. Basically, this game... I'm gonna see if I can pull up the actual line. I don't want to show the whole script on screen, so I'm pulling it up on my phone. If I had to summarize the main problem that everything branches back to into one argument, it would be this. Final Fantasy XIV muddies its identity in an attempt to be too many conflicting things at once, which comes at the inevitable expense of how well it can be any one of those things. This looks like an identity crisis, which makes the creative vision unclear, so what most players end up wanting for the game is at direct odds with what another players want for it, and vice versa. This isn't necessarily a problem by itself, but Square Enix's insistence on appeasing everyone simultaneously or in alternation is unhealthy. My personally firmly held belief is that the motion of picking one thing and going with it is far more important than the specifics of which one thing they pick. Because of this, I feel comfortable putting myself into the shoes of other players or disregarding feelings entirely to analyze design, both of which mean I advocate against my own in-game interests. It's like, it goes beyond just objective failure, and it goes into a lot of the conflicting advice they're getting is also kind of their own fault. And that kind of feeds into a doom spiral. Because, like, they can be listening to people, they can be accepting feedback and working to implement it. But we're listening doesn't necessarily mean we're filtering. And it doesn't necessarily mean we're correctly interpreting. Like, they can accept 2 pieces of advice, but, like, if they go at odds with each other, then both of those players are going to be dissatisfied. Or if you accept a piece of advice from a player who's maybe not too articulate, then, like, there's 2 points of failure there. The player needs to be better at articulating what they want, but then the studio also has to kind of discern what they mean. It's like... Actually, hold on, I think I have something to react to this. I actually think that there is a video that leads into it. It was by Wesk Albert, I believe. The Final Fantasy XIV, the true length of expansions. This is kind of what I mean about player articulation being an issue, and the dev team not correctly interpreting.
Hello. There has been some debate for a while, mostly complaints, about how much content the game has in the more recent expansions. What this video is for is to, as objectively as possible, measure how much content every expansion has. I will include no opinions of my own or anyone else. There will, of course, be subjective measurements, but not due to what I believe deserves to have more time, but an attempt to ballpark how much content something has. I realize that this is a Sisyphean task, with those who are convinced that there is no content not caring about the results. I otherwise felt this was a perspective that we needed to take a look at. If we truly were getting less content, that's something we actually should be concerned about. If we aren't, we should be focusing our efforts and criticism where it is truly needed, such as the quality or how often we get content, both being distinct criticisms to what is constantly parroted, that there is no content.
That's pretty much what I'm talking about. With people not... I feel like we've been having this conversation since Endwalker, the previous expansion. People were saying there's no content, when what they really mean is none of the content is good. None of the content is entrancing. None of the content captures me specifically. And, like, in people were saying there is no content. They were saying that would imply that there is a low quantity of content. But what they were meaning is that the content is bad. That is content quality. If people's criticisms back in Endwalker were based on quality and not quantity, and if they were articulated correctly to reflect quality, and if the dev team interpreted it as quality, then it's all slob effectively. Yeah, exactly. So what people meant is that it's all slop. What they said is there's not enough content, there's not enough stuff. So what we got in Dawntrail is more slop, but it's still all slop. Because people were saying there's not enough content, and not the content isn't good enough, their solution was to add more content, and not to actually make the content good. So, what we have in Dawntrail, current day, is another expansion where the post-patch support is slop. It is in higher quantity than before. There's more slop, but it is all still slop. I don't think we need to watch the rest of the video now, actually. I think we've done the whole point. That is the entire point of the video. But basically, this guy proves that Dawntrail does have more content than all the other expansions, and Endwalker does have more content than all the other expansions. And people should have been saying that it's all bad instead of good. Instead of saying that we need more of it, they should be saying that it was good. They should be saying that it needs to be good. It's actually kind of funny thinking about it now. And that kind of leads me into Savage. Because, like you haven't played the game, I'm sure. So you won't know what I've actually done here. But, like, purely coincidentally, the lower down, like, the F tier fights are actually the harder fights. And I didn't flat out intend for this to be the case, but it's like that is what it's shaped up to be. Because the no content versus it's just slop argument, that only applies to low end stuff that casuals do, that is casual accessible. Raiders are absolutely feasting. And always are. Because Valgamanda, Zralja, this, and this, and this. That is 8 fights in a 9-month window. And now, going into the next one. This, this, this. That is, I think that's 9 fights, actually. Is it 9 fights? No. Yeah, it's 9 fights. In a 9-month window. And now, with the heavyweight here, this. Oh wait, no, Cruiserweight had 10 fights, because Final Verse is also Cruiserweight. This. And, like, another fight this tier because of the, what is it called? Criterion Dungeon. Another Ultimate. And, like, 2 more trials. That's like, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is 10. That's going to be, again, 10 fights in, like, a 1-year window. Raiders are absolutely feasting. So I've seen the argument floating around that, like, and this kind of reflects in my list where the light heavyweight fights are kind of high up in the Savage. Where if casual content continues to all be slop and Savage raids continue to be the only noteworthy thing, I've seen the argument that if that is to continue to be true, then the Savage should be easier across the board, closer to light heavyweight's difficulty. And I feel like a lot of people have never considered that, to be honest. They've never considered that angle. They just think that anyone complaining is complaining because they're bad at the game. And something, get good, get kept, something. But now that I'm actually considering that angle, with the Savage being the only good content, and so it should be easier, I'm kind of agreeing. I kind of agree. I do feel like the difficulty of high-end fights has kind of crept up over time to beyond beyond its own difficulty label. And we've reached a point where difficulty labels no longer mean anything. It's like, I'm going to go full screen real quick. I'm going to open a new text document again. So we have a strict difficulty hierarchy. Easiest. Normal mode content / low end can be like all in one category. That can all be in one category. Then we have the Unreal trials. And they are like an old extreme being brought up to top level, but not really being changed. But because it's an older fight, then it ends up being generally easier. So it is generally the recommended starting point. Extreme trials are a bit harder than an Unreal, and it's intended as something that you do before Savage turns. Savage 1 through 4. Savage raids are like the main repeatable gearing thing that you do in this game, if you're doing it. Because like the weekly lockout, you live by the weekly lockout and you die by the weekly lockout, and that's just how it is. And the turns are generally like ordered within difficulty, within tier. So like Black Cat's the first fight of that tier, so she's easy. And then Honeybee is the second fight of that tier, so she's a bit harder. And Boot Bomber's the third fight, so he's a bit harder. And then Wicked Thunder's the fourth fight, so she's a bit harder. That's the way it's meant to be, at least. So it doesn't always shape out that way. Then Ultimate is harder than a Savage, and is actually the hardest difficulty label in the game. Ultimate is like the absolute hardest fights. It's like, this is borderline, you cannot put... When a fight is Ultimate, it's like, it's really long, really fast, really endurance focused, and it is also reaching you cannot poke it anymore level of difficulty. But the reason I say this is because it is no longer a strict hierarchy anymore, seemingly. A lot of... In making fights harder to continue to test players, it's kind of... The whole system has kind of broken its own rules. And I think this started around like 6.x with Abyssos and Top. Because, like, Top, the Ultimate Raid, the Omega Protocol, was way more difficult than is healthy for the game. But people still ended up doing that, and people still craved more. So the game started to break its own rules, bending over backwards for those players. But I was like, we have Unreal trials which are above normal mode content, but Byaku's an Unreal trial, and he's very easy. You can probably think of some normal stuff that is harder than him, even though he's high-end, and that stuff is low-end. In terms of the label. Extreme trials are harder than Unreals, but like if you think of Thornton from Endwalker, Thornton is probably harder than Valgamander's or Alja, to be honest. And then Extreme to Savage isn't really as clean split either, because thinking about Queen Eternal, who had that really hard phase, that Queen Eternal Ice phase is harder than anything in Black Cat, Honeybee, or Brute Bomber. It's harder than anything in those fights. And then Savage to Ultimate that's not even a clean split either. Because Howling Blade is so fast and so long that it is harder than most ultimates, even though it's a savage. Game design means that words need to mean things. Words stopped meaning things this expansion, and I think that's because they're constantly pursuing harder and harder and harder stuff. And I think it needs to stop. I truly think it needs to stop. I think that those people who are like, if Savage is going to be the only good thing, then it needs to be easier. I think those people are right. I truly think they're right. I'm turning the music back on. It's certainly a strange situation to be in as a raider who's actually really liked pushing myself harder and harder and like doing gradually harder content and progressively improving as a player and getting to be good enough to do the hard shit in the game. But at what point can I admit there's a problem? At what point is everyone else going to admit there's a problem? It's a very strange, this is kind of what I mean. This is part of the whole advocating against my own interests thing. Because if I was only in it for myself, and if I was only in it for what I would find fun, then I'd be totally fine with more hard stuff being in the game, because I'd just clear it myself. And be like, oh fuck you, got mine. But no, I care about the game being a good game. I want it to be a good game more than I want it to be a game that I have fun playing. And that's what's frustrating about this, because it's not... They're bending over backwards to accommodate people like me, but I don't want to be accommodated. I want you to make a good game. I want you to make the game that you want to make, not the game that I want to play. Because ultimately the game that I want to play is a game that's being made by a dev team who wants to make exactly that. Not a dev team that's misinterpreting demands and alienating its player base. And I don't want my fun. I don't want my fun to come at the expense of like countless other people who have nothing to do. Not because there's no content, but because none of the content is good that they can access. And a common counter argument to this is that like everyone has it in them to raid. It's not that big a skill checks, yada yada yada. But that stopped being true this expansion because they pushed the difficulty angle so hard. Like, because of the gradually inclining difficulty, it is no longer true. Oh, hey, the 14 out at the bottom. But it is no longer true that anyone has it in them to raid, given enough dedication, given enough time and perseverance. Now that the fights are so hard, some people just don't have it. And I think that admitting that some people don't have it and framing that their desires, their needs as valid, I don't think that's toxic, but a lot of people would say that it is. Because God forbid I think about someone other than myself. God forbid. It's really weird. I don't see how people can come to that line of reasoning. Like, they want to, it's kind of like, it's toxic positivity. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before, but it kind of is that. It's like, they don't want to be mean, so they will lead that player into a false pretense by being like, oh, anyone can raid given enough time and dedication and perseverance, and yada. They will say that, and they will lead the player that can't raid into a false sense of security and into a false pretense, and that player will end up joining, and grieving, and then they'll have a bad experience that they could have been saved from. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I would incentivize a lot of people to try raiding eventually, but there are steps to that. It's like, maybe it would be like any player can have it in them to raid eventually, given enough work into improving to the baseline. But like, people kind of disrespect the base. I'm getting sidetracked. But basically, with people telling, like, if someone doesn't have it in them to raid truly, people will still tell them that they do have it in them to raid and keep encouraging them to raid and keep trying to pester them to raid. I think that is more toxic than admitting that they don't have it in them to raid and advocating for their needs as a non-raider. Because that's what this is about ultimately. The whole idea that anyone has it in them to raid is kind of a plant by raiders to stop non-raiders from having needs that conflict with theirs, or to frame them as invalid for doing so. Yet this community perceives that as the non-toxic thing to do. And it drives me up the wall. It drives me insane. Genuinely. Like, I seriously don't see how people can come to that conclusion in good faith. I talk about some weird shit. I don't think anyone has ever had this thought ever in the history of 14. Or if they have, I don't think I've ever seen it voiced. Or even implied. But I guess to loop that back to the earlier point, that is the community's narrative. And the community's narrative does not fit the developer's intention. And so one of them has to give. And I think Savage being made it easier would kill two birds with one stone, because it would make that narrative actually true and therefore not a problem. And it would also fix the casual content problem where none of it's good. Because Savage, the good content would then be made casual. Or it would be made more accessible. The entry point to raiding would be more accessible. Therefore more people would raid. I'm tripping over my own words. And I think that if you're listening to this after the fact and you're one of those people who think that anyone can raid at any time, you need to, one, start advocating for easier extremes and savages going forward. And 2, until that happens, shut the fuck up. I don't really have a natural loop into something else here. I think that might be all I wanted to talk about, to be honest. I'm so happy that weight is off my chest now. Holy fuck. I will say one thing though, on a much lighter note. A lot of the games I like are getting new shit lately, so we're gonna have stuff to do. The Monster Girl Hunters has a demo and that's launching Rabbit and Steel update tomorrow. This time, actually. In 24 hours, we're gonna be playing that. We're gonna be grinding that with Shauna, hopefully. A Terraria update that I missed. Oh, I'll get back to that at some point. I'll finish Donut 2. But yeah. I feel like I was going to talk about more stuff, but like, I'm happy to call it here as like, that as like, just saying that's the list, and just leaving it at the list. God, I'm so excited for tomorrow. I'm so excited. Genuine. We should be back. We should be back. Hopefully we're back. Hopefully we're back. Are we back? Are we back? Yeah, it looks like we're back. But yeah, I'm honestly kind of glad I didn't do that now, because ranking these fights and rambling a little bit off script has been kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie, it's really fun. But yeah, I think I've said all my pieces for today, so I'm gonna call it in a minute. But future plans, near future plans: Rabbit and Steel tomorrow, Rabbit and Steel the next day. Probably a lot more Rabbit and Steel going forward if the new stuff's really good and I get absolutely mind blown by it. I will put in Dona and Terraria for next week as well, because I want to at least finish one of those. Finishing both of them would be great, but I want to finish at least one of them before Monster Girl Hunters comes out, so I can make that the next long play. Yeah. I've said my piece. I will be resting now until tomorrow for Rabbit and Steel. Thanks for coming out to watch, Ade, and thank you everyone else who's joined me along the way. I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to see you around again. Take good care of yourself till tomorrow, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.